Welcome to Conscious Cuisine Conversations. I'm your host, Shamika, and today we have a fabulous guest, and you're very beautiful. I just want you to say, say that. I'm going to have you introduce yourself. And first of all, your name is Nzingah.
Yes.
How do I pronounce your last name?
Oniwosan.
Okay. Say it one more time.
Oniwosan.
Oniwosan.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So can you tell us the meaning behind your name? Is there a meaning behind your name?
Yeah. So, let me say this. I changed my name. It's not my birth name. I've been Nzingah since 2004.
Okay. That was like, I know you're Haitian.
Yeah.
So what's the origin of your name?
People because they're like, wait a second. How you Haitian? And your Haitian parents were that revolutionary? No, they weren't. So, Nzingah is a queen from Angola who fought off the Portuguese when they tried to invade her country during the transatlantic slave trade, and she fought them off for 40 years. So she has this amazing story. Most recently, they did like a docuseries called African Queens, and they did one specifically on her. It's really, really good.
It's on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
I'm going to watch it now.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I learned things that I didn't even know, and I studied her very deeply. So her story really resonated with me. And so when I was really deep in self-reconstruction and Pan-Africanism and things like that, I felt like I wanted a name that really aligned with my African origins, and so Nzingah is how I got that name. Now, Oniwosan is a little bit more nuanced, because traditionally in different African cultures, when a child is born, a reading is done to learn what their destiny is. And then they're giving one of their names that they're giving, because oftentimes you're given more than one name. One of the name that they're given is a name that relates to their purpose and their destiny. And so around that same time, I had that destiny reading done, and my destiny is to be a healer. And so Oniwosan means healer in Yoruba.
Wow. How did your Haitian family feel about you changing your name?
Oh, it was a hot mess, like my mom was like, I didn't call you that, And so as my friends were coming to terms with me being Nzingah, they would call the house and they'd be like, can I speak to Nzingah? And my mom would be like, who? Oh. And they'd be like, can I speak to Nzingah? They'd be like, who? And then they would switch over to my birth name. And she'd be like, okay. And I was like, Mom, what you doing? I didn't call you that, But now, my family, it's now almost, next year will be 20 years since I've been Nzingah. And so, they call me that,
Your family?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to be consistent, right? And I think oftentimes if there's an inconsistency, your parents won't often, or family won't respect some of the things that you're doing because they feel like you're flaky. Oh, this is one of those things you're doing. Yeah. And I've been very consistent in that I'm Nzingah, so.
That's beautiful. I never knew that because I did see your name. I'm not going to lie. I assumed, too, that you're African or some descent. So when I saw your profile, you had the Haitian flag. I was like, she's Haitian.
Yeah. But you know what? Even in Haiti, because I have a business in Haiti, they don't think I'm They don't think I'm Haitian. They think I'm African. Yeah, like I'm walking the streets. What's African? Because the combo of me, I guess face structure wise, it doesn't align with certain regions, like where my dad is from. And so sometimes people know that I'm Haitian, but oftentimes, and even in Haiti, they assume that I'm from Africa, West Africa.
Wow. That's so interesting. So you being of Haitian, were you born in Haiti?
I was born in America.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And you say you have a business in Haiti?
Yes. I'm rare.
Yeah, because I'm Haitian by association and then later penetration.
Okay.
With Haitians, like even my child's father, I'm like, you need to take our son to Haiti. He's never been to Haiti. He's like, it's kind of rough there right now. So I'm like, do you travel to Haiti often?
I do travel to Haiti. I have a co-working space. It's called Impact Hub Port-au-Prince. We're part of a network of co-working spaces around the world. And about 100 co-working spaces around the world are impact hubs, and our focus is to work with social entrepreneurs, and those are people who are creating businesses who are impacting their communities. We've been in operation for close to 5-6 years now, and I will say that having a business in Haiti has definitely changed me in my perception. It's so easy for me to talk about Haiti before from a diaspora perspective, but having a business that's still open and operating during times where most people have to shut down and leave the country has been quite interesting. I love Haiti, to be honest. If it were not for the political situations that are ongoing right now, I would probably have a second home in Haiti. And I do have a second home by way of my business.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been so profound and such amazing work.
Yeah.
That we've been able to do in the period of time. I could have not imagined what we're doing right now.
That's amazing. That's dope. 'Cause like I said, my family's from Jamaica. I'm Jamaican. And I asked my dad, would you ever like move back to Jamaica to retire? And he's like, no. And I'm like, what? I feel like the younger generation of people, we're like, we want to get away from America.
Yeah. I think the challenge is our parents often have trauma related to their native country and they haven't done the work around it. I have gone to Haiti more than my mom has in the past. My mom's been here now for 41 years. Wow. She's only gone back once.
Wow.
And that's because of her own trauma in Haiti.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, my generation, we're hearing about Haiti through the optic of our parents' trauma. And specific to Haiti, like the global narrative of lack and instability. And so oftentimes when people talk about Haiti, they're really talking about Port-au-Prince and not Haiti as a whole. It's a country, you know? And so I always, when I give this example, I always say it's equivalent to talking about the United States from the lens of Chicago. South side of Chicago.
Oh, I like that.
Right? And we know that the United States as a whole is not the south side of Chicago. And so when we refer to Haiti, we often refer to it in terms of Port-au-Prince. And Port-au-Prince is the capital, but it is not the entirety. And so there's places that are not under duress, that are functioning. We do have, I'm not going to sit here and act like we don't have issues, because we do, but Haiti honestly needs our tourism, because those are those dollars that they need to keep things running and functioning. And so like last year, I brought someone to the north part of Haiti, and they fell in love, and they didn't expect it to be what it was, you know? And so, or like when we talk about the work that we're doing in Port-au-Prince, because my businesses are Port-au-Prince.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So they're like, oh, I didn't think that there were good things happening, because they were always talking about the bad things. And there are good things happening. We have had a conference every year in Port-au-Prince that bring a couple of hundred people in, and, you know, so.
Wow, I love that. That's a great point, too, because we can say that about Africa, too. Like, they only highlight, like, they think it's, like, old and primitive, and there's no, like, cities and businesses. So that's a great point. So you are of Haitian descent. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know you say you're an artist, and we don't know that much about that side of you.
Okay, so I am Haitian-American, first gen. I am a master teaching artist, and so I am multidisciplinary artist, and I go into schools or work with school systems, and I use the arts as a platform to teach curriculum, so social studies, math, or help children and adults with disabilities reach milestones, and that's been my business for the past 18 years.
Wow.
So as an artist, I'm a musician, I'm a visual artist, I do West African and Haitian dance, I'm a poet as well as a jewelry designer. And so I think it's because I wear so many hats as an artist, it's really informed my work as a teaching artist. And so it's allowed me to have amazing outcomes and meet amazing people in that journey. And it's really informed who I am as well.
That's amazing. I love that, because I know you as this holistic healing chef. You also promote veganism.
Yes.
How long have you been vegan?
I've been plant-based for since 2001, 22 years.
You don't like the term vegan?
I feel like, no.
Okay.
Yes and no. I like it. but there are parts to it that can be conflicting for me. Particularly, like, I was thinking about it the other day. I do West African dance, and the drums that they use for West African dance have animal skin. And so in the vegan world, that would be a conflict, right? Yeah. I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, that's a conflict, you know? And so I prefer plant-based because I've had people like come after me and tell me they wouldn't follow. I remember going on a retreat. I was a chef for a retreat, and part of the retreat was we went horseback riding. And I posted a video of me going horseback riding, and this woman was like, I am not following you anymore because you're promoting animal abuse. And I was just like, I looked at the conditions of these horses, and I don't feel like I participated in it, but because she felt that I was vegan, that I should have some hard lines, and because I didn't have the hard lines that she attributed to veganism, she then felt that I was being inauthentic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I've had other moments like that, and most recently when I was thinking about like Haitian folklore, West African dance, 95% of those drums are made with animal skin. You know, wow. And so for me to say I do that, and you know, I can see how, oh, well, how vegan are you if you're dancing to drums that are made with animal skin? But then when you look at it from a holistic perspective, they're not killing the animals in West Africa just for the skin. Like, every part of that animal is used in a sustainable way. So like, obviously, most people are not vegan in that space. So when they kill the goat or the cow, they're using the bone to make jewelry. They're using the skin to make fabric or to make drums and things like that. And so I think that it's so easy for us from the West to come in with all our judgment. But for me, it's like, well, is there a full circle in the process, or are we just doing things when we're not thinking about Mother Earth in the process? And I feel like inherently in a lot of those cultures, those things are inherently there. Like, it's more sustainable by nature. Whereas here in the West, we have to really think about being sustainable.
I kind of want you to touch on that. So, like, overseas, like in Africa, are we just naturally sustainable?
There are parts to the culture that are naturally sustainable. We're not just going to kill a cow and like leave all the parts to waste, right? Or it's just more holistic. Like, within the culture is the religion. Like, those things are not separate. Like, in my studies, what I found is things are more integrated. And of course, I'm speaking as someone who, when we think about how we got here as people of African descent living in the West, we were removed from those processes, right? Yes. And especially as someone who's first generation, I always say we live on a hyphen. I've written an essay on it, right? Because I'm not American enough for Americans, nor am I Haitian enough for Haitians, where I'm constantly trying to justify me being Haitian to Haitians because they're like, oh, you're not Haitian because you were born in America, right? And so I love to use the quote that Malcolm X used where he says, well, if a cat has its kittens in an oven, does that make the kittens a biscuit? Right? Because in ovens we make biscuits, but now because the kittens were born in an oven, does that make it a biscuit? And sometimes that goes over people's heads. But I also recognize that there are things that I don't get in both cultures because of the fact that I live on that hyphen. Like, when I understand jokes better in Haitian, because there are jokes that would go over my head. Yeah. Because I was not immersed in a Haitian culture by way of the country. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't get it. Yeah. You know?
No, I have a Haitian, I lived in a Haitian community, and I have a lot of Haitian friends, and I'm like, can you translate it for me? And she's like, it's hard to translate in English.
Yeah, and there's things that we say that there's not a direct translation where I have to do more explaining. Yeah. I was our church translator. I've been the translator for a long time in my life. And so what I've had to navigate as a translator is I have to explain it instead of like doing a one-to-one, because the one-to-one does not explain that thing, you know. And so like I'll just say like, well, instead of saying this phrase, you could just use this word in Creole to explain what that person is.
Oh, got you. And so when I asked you about, you know, being vegan, I just learned that like the origin of like veganism, like the whole society, the vegan society, it was originated from the vegetarian. And then someone said, we no longer want to include like dairy and eggs like that, so we're going to be vegan. And then someone else came and said, we can do that, but also no animal products. So that's why I too like to refer to myself as plant-based, because I'm not into labels, but just for society's sake, to people understand, I'll say I'm vegan. But I don't want to be placed in that box because, sorry, I still wear leather. So I can't say I'm necessarily vegan for the animals. It's more so for my health and the food. So I totally understand what the plant-based phrase.
And oftentimes I have to even be clear on plant-based, because some people say they're plant-based and they eat meat.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. So I'm like, Whole Foods plant-based vegan.
The labels.
You know, gives a better context. For the people who understand the labels, but some people don't understand the labels either. So it's just, I'm often saying, I don't eat animals. I don't eat anything that has a mother.
Yeah, what's his name? Dick Gregory. He said, I mean, anything that poops, pees.
Yeah, I love Dick.
Yeah.
He's so cool. I had a chance to meet him in person. He's so funny.
I'm laughing because if someone doesn't know who Dick Gregory is, and you just said, I love Dick.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, baby, I like it raw.
So where'd you get that name? Because that's your name you go by on Instagram.
Okay, so it's like twofold. One, it's a reference to the song, Shimmy, Shimmy, Sha, yes, baby, I like, yeah, baby, I like it raw.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, baby, I like it raw. So there's that song, right? But I was hosting a challenge. Okay, so I had imposter syndrome with the work that I do as a healer. I got certified with Dr. Africa, like did his intro and then did his advanced and did other studies. And I felt like, I didn't feel like I had enough information, right? And I think it's because I was on my way to being a doctor, and I know how much people like look at titles. And so oftentimes when I would get clients, it would be by word of mouth, like, hey, yeah, I know Nzingah can help you. She's a holistic health consultant. And so my dad had a stroke, and it was just kind of like, you have all this information. Why are you withholding this information? Like, you can share this information in a better way, and no, you don't have to look like jacked up, because also I felt like I needed to look a certain way to present the information. So then I created a challenge, started in January, and we did 30 days raw. And throughout it, I was sharing recipes I had for years that I used to help heal myself, and throughout it was like, yeah, baby, I like it raw. And at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to take my business serious. I'm going to give it a name. And I was like, well, what am I going to call it? And because we kept saying, yes, baby, baby, I like it raw. I was like, okay, I can call it, yes, baby, I like it raw. And that's how I became, yes, baby, I like it raw. Now, I will say this, my business is not only focused on raw foods.
I'm going there.
Yeah. So a lot of people assume, and it's so funny now because I make cooked meals, and it's like, oh, you only eat raw foods. I'm like, I do videos with cooked meals. Like, no, obviously not.
Obviously.
But it also is, I lean more on the rawness. Like, I like more pure, more unfiltered, more unadulterated is where I lean in. Like, so like, I feel like overall in my life, I'm more of a purist. In terms of, I do West African dance, I do traditional dance. I do traditional dance from Haiti. I do traditional dance from here. I use clean beauty products as much as possible. Even my yoga practice is pretty like traditional. And so raw, meaning like we try to keep it as simple as possible. In this yes baby I like it raw space.
I was going to ask you that, do you feel like, because your name does have raw in there, do you feel like it's sustainable to live like a raw foodist lifestyle?
That year I was raw for 6 months.
Okay.
I'm high raw on most days. Mm-hmm. I have friends that have been raw for almost 20 years.
Wow.
So I will say it can be sustainable if you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of preparation and discipline that's required that I think a lot of people right now don't necessarily have.
No. So, okay, when you say raw, like when I think of raw, I'm thinking of I can pick up this apple and I'm going to eat it as is, or if I want a salad, I just have my greens, my tomatoes, cucumbers. To me, that's raw, just eating it naturally as is from earth.
I'm certified as a raw vegan chef, so we can get real fancy.
Yes, we
can get real fancy. And if you're going to be raw all the time, you want to get fancy.
Okay.
Yeah, like, it's cute.
Yeah.
Salad, apple here.
Yeah.
It's cute.
It gets boring.
So we get fancy. We can make noodles. We can make pizza. We can make... And a lot of those things are also because we're trying to create more nutrient-dense meals, we do a lot of sprouting because then we can get our proteins and a lot of micro nutrients in it. But again, a lot of people go into these lifestyle dietary changes and they don't do their research. So then they don't know what they need to do in order to make it sustainable for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Because I did raw. And when I say raw, like I just said, like the fruits and vegetables, but I'm like, I need cooked food.
So I run raw programs.
Okay.
And so that's always something that comes up. So I always tell people, you can leave the food out so it can become room temperature, or you can throw it in a dehydrator and it can be warm, Because I make a raw lasagna, and when it comes out the dehydrator, it's warm. It's not cold. Of course, you can have your teas and things like that. I just think that people don't have a lot of recipes to work with.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I find is people don't eat enough. That's always my big challenge. And you have to consume way more volume in a raw vegan space than you are comfortable with. And honestly, when I work with clients, I feel like most of my clients are under eating. Even if they weren't raw, they were not eating enough food. And so it's always a challenge then to get people to eat up. Because typically with a raw vegan diet, if you're like 80-20, or there's different types of raw vegan. That's a whole different conversation. A woman can eat about 3,000 calories and a man can eat about 5,000 calories a day.
Wow.
And not bulk up in the way that we would traditionally think if you were eating a standard SAD diet, standard American diet. And that'll be sustainable. But most people, when they go into that raw vegan space, they're not eating enough food. And so that's why they feel weak. And because they're taking the same approach that they had to their diet before and just translating it into a different space.
That's so
and that's
true.
Just, that same thing is applicable to veganism as well.
Exactly.
So you never learned how to eat correctly. You had like this broad overview of what that would look like, and then you took those same habits and then you just put a different title on it. And so I think that's why some people who become vegan and then become omnivores again, because they didn't know how to eat well before, and then they came into a space that requires a little bit of research and understanding to create sustainability, and they didn't do that, and then they fall short, and then they revert back to what they know.
That's so true. That's probably why there's a deterrence. Like, people find veganism off-putting because they have to unlearn what they already know and then relearn something new. Yeah. So that could be like, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to stick to what I already know. So I totally get that. So with your program, because I love, like, people are saying, like I said, everything isn't for everyone. There isn't like a cookie cutter application for a particular person. But with your program, you have the 21-day plant-based.
I have a couple programs.
Okay.
So I have a 21-day reset. And that 21-day reset is more like a cleanse detox. So let me backtrack. I didn't become vegan because I didn't like meat.
Okay.
I became vegan because I was sick. I have a brain tumor, an autoimmune disorder called scleroderma, and PCOS. I got diagnosed with these things by the time I was 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I was on medication for almost a decade. And in college, I was just like, this is not how I want to live for the rest of my life. And so I started to do a little bit more research. I got very intentional. And in my research, I was like, okay, I think if I detox and cleanse, I go plant-based, take on holistic practices, I'm going to be able to reverse some of these things that are happening as a consequence of the diseases that I've been diagnosed with. Mm-hmm. And that's how I'm here today.
Okay.
So I did reverse a lot of the symptoms. A lot of my things are in remission.
Okay.
And I say remission because I've learned that healing is nuanced, because if I'm healed, I would say I could go back to my old diet and everything will be okay. But I know based on the conditions that I have that there's a lifestyle that I have to maintain in order for me to be at homeostasis.
Right.
So I created my program based on my journey to heal. And so it's 21 days. We do vegan, cooked, then we go into raw. And then I also have like a herbal program that people use, or they have the option not to use.
Okay.
And so in that program, I do a lot of education. Like, okay, this is protocols that you can do on a consistent basis outside of this to help you maintain homeostasis. These are why we want to eat certain foods. This is why historically you've seen detox and cleanse programs. What's the difference between a cleanse and detox? Because a lot of times we just throw those words out.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so it's gonna get crunchy because the internet is really crunchy right now. A detox supports your body's natural, the organs that already do detoxification. Those two main organs are your liver and your kidneys. So there are herbs and foods that support those organs. And so there's a list of people who will be like, well, we have organs that do it, and why would you need to do a detox if your organs are already doing it? And I'm like, are we going to really act like we're living lifestyles that are not taxing those organs? Are we really going to do that? Are we really going to do that?
Exactly.
Like the drinking hurts your liver, right?
Yes.
Certain foods that we eat, you're right. Like we're not even going to talk about how insulin resistance and all those things impact our kidneys. So these resets allow our organs to reset themselves to do what they're supposed to do, right? It's like, for me, it's like saying that, well, our car has parts that do certain things and we never need to do a tune-up or a oil change, right? A cleanse, on the other side, focuses on your colon and eliminating waste.
Yes.
Those are two different things. Right? And with a colon cleanse, you oftentimes have to bring in certain foods and or herbs to support that process. Yeah. And a lot of us are constipated.
Heavily.
Right? Which is why we're seeing an uptick of colon cancer and things like that. Because it's also related to how often we have bowel movement.
Yes.
So
I remember when I was younger, I went to the doctor because this is weird probably. I don't care. I've always been fascinated with like poop, with waste. Like I remember I was younger, I would use the bathroom and I always look. People don't check their stool.
I talk about it a lot too. Yeah. And people are like, oh, you're always talking about poop. With people in my program, we're like, I'm going to be your poop best friend. Yeah. Because your poop tells you so much.
Exactly. And I would look in there and I started researching, like, you want your poop. They say you want the poop to be long like a sausage. That's a healthy poop. And I remember when I was younger, I seen, I'm Jamaican, so my poop looked like goat doo-doo. And I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, why does my poop look like that? And she's like, you need take some fiber or something like that. But I think a lot of people are afraid to use the bathroom.
They are afraid to use the bathroom. They won't use the bathroom when their body's calling for it. They'll hold it in. But also this space holistically is a space we hold our emotions. Oh. So if you are... And this is woo-woo for some people.
What is woo-woo?
Woo-woo, like, people are like, oh, that's woo-woo, but the science has started to meet the woo-woo. Okay? Right? Like, there are things that we've been saying in this holistic space when you look at Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, and beyond, that people are like, oh, that's woo-woo, there's no science confirmation. And now the science is confirming things that our ancestors have been saying forever. So, when we look at illness or dis-ease in the body holistically, we say that there's a mind-body-spirit connection. And so if there is disease, that though there's something else happening, maybe mentally or spiritually. I'll use myself as an example. Okay, I have a prolactinoma. That's a pituitary tumor. There's actual research that shows men and women who have that particular tumor have abandonment issues from their dad, or their dads were abusive or alcoholic.
Wow.
There's actual research that shows that people with this tumor have this trauma.
So which trauma do you have?
My dad was present, but there were times that he would go away, and then there was abuse in the household.
Okay.
Yeah, so it didn't make sense. Okay, like, oh, I can relate my trauma to what's presenting itself. Then my autoimmune disorder is scleroderma. And when I went to a Chinese medicine doctor, the first thing he said to me when I was actively like, hey, I want to heal in a non-traditional way, he was like, oh, that's a disease of fear. And I was like, what is he talking about? Like, because in your 20s, you're real arrogant. You think you know everything. No one can't tell you anything because you just graduated high school. And don't let you be like gifted advanced because you really think you know everything, right? And I was like, he don't know what he's talking about. And then I sat back and I thought about when my scleroderma showed up and I was living in perpetual fear. My mom is at the time they called it bipolar schizophrenic. Now they call it schizoaffective. And when she would be manic, it was absolute chaos and violence. And so I don't think people who have parents who have mental illness often talk about the anxiety that arrives as a result of having to live with that person for extended periods of time. So I had so much anxiety, and I was always on the corner of my seat waiting for the next shoe to drop. And when my scleroderma started to present was around that time.
Wow. That is
so oftentimes when I work with clients, we also talk about there's trauma that we need to address. And the research also shows it now. Again, woo-woo is meeting science, right? So they say that adults who had ACEs, adverse childhood experiences for extended periods of time, are more likely to have autoimmune disorders.
Wow. Oh, that was deep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the woo-woo is now integrating with
science.
Yeah.
Because wow, I know a lot of people talk about like healing their childhood trauma. Can we actually heal? A lot of people today, the way that we maneuver, they revert back to there's some childhood trauma. How could something that happened years ago still present itself today?
Well, what my spiritual teacher says in your 0 to 7, that sets the pace for you, right? A lot of what happens in your 0 to 7 is going to repeat itself until you heal it. But when you think about it, your childhood is your foundation. And so oftentimes we respond to the world from our wound. And we interact with the world based on what our wound was. And I prefer to use myself instead of like external examples because I got good examples, but I'm a great example. So I was sexually abused, and I remember I was young, and I was coming out of my abuse. But I still had PTSD because I'm used to, you touch me, I fight. And so I remember working at a nonprofit, and one of my students touched me inappropriately. And my automatic response was, and I had to catch myself. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, right? I responded that way because of my trauma.
Yeah.
And so that also led to me going to therapy and unpacking and doing that work, and also being conscious of what my triggers were, and also knowing that there was triggers that I wouldn't know what they were until someone landed on that mine, right? Particularly with things like sexual trauma. Oftentimes you have landmines and you don't know what they are until someone sets it off. Like certain smells are triggers for me. With my mom's mental illness, a time of the year is a trigger. where I get really anxious in the fall because that was often the time that she would have a manic episode. And so whenever the change in Florida season happens, I'm on edge, like, oh, something's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And nothing's happened, but because in my childhood that pattern was established, you just don't undo a pattern by saying, I don't want this pattern to be there anymore. Yeah. And so that's where the work in therapy was really profound, because I found tools that helped me navigate those. And it also helped me have a better nuance and understanding of how I interact with people, and knowing that sometimes I was projecting, and also creating boundaries was a bigger issue for me, because in having to deal with someone with mental illness, you create a higher level of tolerance for inappropriate behavior. And so then when you go into the world, your threshold is much more nuanced. Like someone's baseline of like, oh, I'm going to use the word, that's some fuck shit. My fuck shit is all the way up here because I had to tolerate a lot of shit as a child. And so as an adult, my friends would be like, well, why are you dealing with that? And I was like, oh, it's not that bad. Not that bad compared to my childhood trauma. And that's what people are operating from, because your childhood sets the framework. And then, I always say, like, your childhood is such a short period of time, and most of us are spending our adulthood trying to unpack all the things that happened to us in our childhood.
Wow. So you also mentioned that you suffered, or are you still dealing with the PCOS?
I've reversed it. I got tested recently a couple of years ago, and the numbers that often show it are not. My numbers are normal.
Okay, that's good.
So that was a combination of lifestyle. I would say the biggest thing, if you're coming into veganism for your health, is don't forget the things that you consume outside of your mouth. Don't forget, like, what you eat, what you put on your skin, what you put on your hair, what you consume by way of, like, what you're listening to, watching by way of social media. How are you consuming stress? And are you putting yourself into stressful situations without your knowledge? So I often talk about how much vicarious trauma we get by way of social media. Right? And vicarious trauma means, like, although you didn't experience the trauma directly by watching or hearing something, you feel the trauma. Your body feels like you're being traumatized mentally and physically. And so you throw yourself in fight or flight. Yeah. So for me, like, I actively, because I recognize that all the things that I deal with health-wise are related to stress. So I'm very, like, that's why I practice yoga. That's why I do my meditation. That's why I've had to establish large boundaries. But I think oftentimes we take social media for granted. Yeah. Because I'll be scrolling, and then it's like, oh, I didn't need to see somebody get shot right now. And so for me, I don't click on those videos where, okay, I know that person died. I don't need to witness that, because it derails me. It derails me. And when I feel stressed, I feel it. If my stomach feels a certain way, my chest tightens, and all of those are a fight or flight response. Yeah. So
that's so true. I saw something on Instagram that said you'll be okay or something like that, but your nervous system feels it for you.
Yeah. So that's why I don't even try to consume. Like, I'll get caught. Sometimes you get caught up in, like, whatever's trending, and you're, like, getting worked up and angry about these things, and you're thinking, like, that anger is a superficial anger, but your body doesn't know that this is not alive. And because when we talk about, like, our nervous system and fight or flight, we say, if you believe in evolution, that those things were established so we could run away from lions, tigers, and bears, right? But our body doesn't know the difference between big T or little t. It shows up in the same, we respond the same way. to stress.
That's so true.
And so sometimes we often minimize little t. When I say t, I'm referring to trauma.
Yes.
We minimize someone's little t, like, oh, that's not a big deal. You weren't kidnapped, you know. But that experience for that person was traumatic.
Yeah.
You know, and so how do we have tools in place to process that in a healthy way so that it does not incapacitate us or lead to disease?
Wow, I want to touch on that because I also saw Charlemagne the God. He said that there isn't a study yet to show the impact that social media is having on us or will had on us later on in the future.
There are some studies that are being made, particularly with children.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of studies that show that children who use social media at a certain level have more anxiety, they have more body dysmorphia, they suffer from more depression. And I want to say that they're starting to see similar results for adults. But it becomes more crucial for children because what we find is then we see things like speech delay and delay in other places of cognition in that early childhood space because of that overstimulation in the brain.
That's true.
By way of technology. So
you mentioned tools and therapy. With therapy and healing, is there like a cookie cutter approach when it comes to a particular like tools used to try and heal someone? Could your tools heal me?
Yes and no, because my trauma is different than yours.
Right.
I will say that for those of you who are trying to heal, I will say this. When I started to heal, I thought one thing would work and everything would be okay. And in the early parts of my journey, like I want to cry, I felt very disappointed when I recognized that I still wasn't healed. And I will say that healing is layered. Oftentimes you may be working on one layer and behind that there's a new layer, a new nuance that you're going to have to uncover, and that might require something different. I will say that therapy can be a great tool if you get a great therapist and you do the work. Oftentimes people think about therapy from the space of like you're talking to someone and that's it. But when you work with a great therapist, in therapy there's work, there's assignments, there's things that you have to do in order to find a space where you can be okay. And you can be okay and still healing. I think for me in my early times, I was like, well, if I'm still healing, then that means I'm not okay. Right? And so I will say that there are certain things that can help, like meditation, but I say that with a caveat. Different forms of meditation might be effective. Oftentimes when we think about meditation, we think about closing our eyes and sitting in silence. And silence might be too overbearing for someone. So then you want to look at more of an active meditation. There's a meditation like shaking and dancing. I have a recording of that I can send your way if you want. Okay. Where that's for someone who has trauma stuck in their bodies and they need to like unfold that. Yoga can be used in that way too, but sometimes a yoga class can be overwhelming depending on what kind of yoga class it is. So sometimes when people go to yoga, I tell them go to a different types of yoga classes and find the ones that resonate with you. So I started with a type of yoga, and then through the years I moved into a different yoga space, and I remember going into Ashtanga, and the way Ashtanga is taught, there's a lot of hands-on adjustments. No way 20 years ago would I have been able to manage that with my sexual trauma. You know, and for me, when I got into Ashtanga, I recognized how far I had gotten because I could use that as a new tool in that space, and it also helped me recognize that I wasn't the person I was when I was 20, 18, 19 years old, fresh off of being raped, you know, and someone touching me was like, punch.
Yeah. So you mentioned meditation, yoga.
Breath work, but if you have trauma, breath retention can be triggering because a lot of times people, when they are traumatized, hold their breath. So sometimes you have to find breath work that doesn't have retention in it.
Okay. What is your favorite way of movement? Because I know you do dance, yoga, and you also do Pilates.
God, I don't like these questions. I like to move in the way that my body calls for.
Okay.
And I try to move in line with my menstrual cycle now more than not. So, you know, you have different phases, and in those different phases, I move a certain way.
Okay.
And so, that's what I do. So I go to the gym. I like to hit some weights.
Okay.
I can leg press 350 right now, so I'm really proud of myself about that. I use Pilates because I know that I need things that are less stressful now that I'm entering like a perimenopause phase. And so I lean on yoga and strength training more, and I dance as well as cardio, and I run too. It just depends. It depends on the assignment, what I'm working on. But I also know that during that week of my menstrual cycle, I take days off at the top of it, and then when I come in, I do things like Pilates and yoga, because that's a more yin time for me.
Okay.
Whereas when I'm like ovulating and things like that, I can go hard, I can do some HIIT and other things like that. And so I lean towards movement based on where I am in my cycle.
I'm sorry, what is
Perimenopause is the phase that your body goes into before you go into menopause.
Okay.
So there are things that happen to a woman's body leading up to menopause. And let's talk about the research. There's new research that says that women of color, women of African and Latin descent, enter perimenopause much more earlier than their white counterparts, like 30s. And that our symptoms look very different than our white counterparts. So we have more anxiety, some other things, or overall, like depression and anxiety with all women start to uptick. There's some other things that happen. And so now the research is saying, well, what do we, if gone undiagnosed and untreated with women, minority women, it could lead to horrific outcomes on the other side of menopause, like heart disease.
Wow.
And then for women in general, because we go undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, it's a really hard time in our lives. So that's when we start to see the weight gain. Doing the same things, nothing's really changed, but the hormones are different.
Yeah.
I have a friend who has anxiety, and we were talking about it, and I was like, oh, like I saw research recently where they were saying that traditionally when women start to present things like depression and anxiety, they don't identify that they might be in this perimenopause phase, and they'll give them like an SSRI, which is like a like drugs to help with chemical nuances of the brain. But we won't respond to that because it's not a chemical nuance because of the brain. It's a hormonal issue that should have been addressed by hormone therapy.
Okay. You mentioned breathing, and I saw you doing like, what is soft belly breathing?
Oh, soft belly breathing is great for fight or flight.
Okay.
You know, when I talked about like the stress thing, so we have a vagus nerve that runs from our brain to our belly, but it's a two. So oftentimes some nerves can be a one-way pathway, but this nerve is a two-way pathway. And so through soft belly breathing, you bring it in through your nose, out through your mouth. You can send a message by way of the vagus nerve to the brain to say that I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm not in danger.
Wow. I love that. Okay, so you also mentioned about making like our favorite foods healthy. How do we make comfort food, our favorite foods that we grew up eating, healthier and still appealing so that we eat it, but it still has health benefits?
Sometimes it's swaps, you know. Date syrup or dates or date sugar, coconut sugar. Agave is now becoming the bad girl on the block. Some people are saying it's not what they said it was. There's monk fruit as well. Some of these substitutes require some chemistry because they're not a one-to-one.
Right.
So you're going to have to figure that out. And then if you're changing a powder for liquid, then you're going to have to adjust because now you're adding more moisture to something. Reducing oil. Cooking without oil is a great way. We talk about that oftentimes in that whole foods plant-based space. They say get rid of the oil because the studies sometimes show that oil is the real cause for diabetes and some other conditions that people deal with, because oftentimes people think diabetes as a sugar disease and they don't think that the oil might be the culprit as well. getting more leafy greens in can be more helpful. Just changing the nature of the plate.
Okay.
Not necessarily taking things away, but increasing some things and reducing the volume on others can have a really big impact as well, you know.
Okay, I like that. So you say you're Haitian, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was your Haitian family? What was their opinion, or what did they think about you, like, being plant-based? Because I know what Haitians are like, vegan, what's that? Like,
Okay, well, I'm nuanced. I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. So we had restrictions already there. And so I think what was more upsetting for them, because so let me say why that makes sense. Seventh-day Adventism actually preaches vegetarianism and veganism. We have a health message. And so oftentimes at the church I went to, if we had potluck, it was vegan.
Okay.
And so veganism, we had a church market that had vegan food in it. Because there's even like a vegan Seventh-day Adventist line by Loma Linda.
Oh, wow.
So like meat substitutes and stuff like that. And so those were often used during those potlucks. So I was very aware of veganism, and we also, they would share documentaries during AY. And so when I was very like not gonna be vegan, I remember them showing this documentary on chicken and why you shouldn't eat chicken because they were eating poop and all this other things. And I was like, I don't care what the chicken eat. I'm going to eat my chicken, you know? And that's why I always work with people, because I've been that person, you know? Like, I was like, I don't care. That documentary does not move me. So when I made the transition, they weren't per se like, what are you doing? They were more like, I use it as a way to get out of cooking, because in our household, the way our 7-day household was set up, oftentimes after church on a Saturday, people would come to someone's house to eat, and our house was one of those households. So 20, 30 people would come to our house every Saturday to eat, and I was responsible for those meals.
Okay.
So when I became vegan, I was like, I don't cook meat.
Yeah.
So it was more like, what do you mean you don't cook meat, you know? And my family's been pretty supportive. They make vegan meals for me. Like when we have potlucks or family gatherings, they make sure I have something available. Or they'll let me know what I can't eat. I remember when my grandmother was alive, she had made some rice. I was like, ooh, Grandma, can I have some of the rice? And she's like, I cooked the oil. The oil I used was from the chicken. And that's to let you know, like, how they committed they knew I was, and they knew the nuances. Although they weren't living that lifestyle. They knew, like, okay, she's vegan. Like, she's not going to eat this rice that we made with the chicken.
Vegan.
Not veganish, you know? You know, there are people who identify as veganish.
People identify with a lot of different things.
Yeah,
I'm like, I can't keep up. But you mentioned AY,
Adventist Youth.
Oh, okay.
So embedded in 7-day Adventism is a lot of learning and informing. And so they would have programming in an afternoon after church service for the youth to learn and grow, or the families to learn and grow. So we will watch documentaries or have special guests come in and speak.
So 2 things. I saw on Netflix, there's this documentary, I think it's called The Blue Zone.
Yep, we're on the Blue Zone.
Yeah, I
Some
saw
of us
that.
are on the Blue Zone. Not all of us are on the Blue Zone.
Okay. I saw that. I was like, wow, you guys are like the healthiest, because he went to California, I think, in the city.
Loma Linda.
Oh, yeah. You're familiar with it? Yeah. So he went there, and he went to the church, and he went to someone's home, and they prepared him like the vegetarian foods. I was like, wow, like, this is amazing. I love that documentary, by the way. Did you see it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, but you're familiar with
Blue Zones.
Blue Zones.
Yeah. I knew that 7-day Adventists were on the Blue Zones. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Some 7-day Adventists. I want to say that.
You said that twice. What does that mean?
I was 7-day Adventist for most of my life, so I also know that not all 7-day Adventists really, you know, uphold the health message in the way that would be sustainable to be centennials, you know.
I want to be one after watching the Blue Zone. I was like, I started Googling it to live to age of 100. Do you think you want to live that?
Oh, I'm betting for 120.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the goal. I want to be 120 years
really?
old. At least 120 years.
At least.
Yeah.
Wow. I hope so. That's amazing. So you also said that you guys watch a lot of documentaries, but it didn't move you. What moved you? Because some people...
I wanted to heal. I was tired of being on medication. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was tired of being poked and prodded. I was tired of... My autoimmune disorder is rare, and I was atypical, so they wanted to study me. In the midst of being, for anyone who's had an autoimmune disorder, they will tell you it's hard to get diagnosed. And so like they would have me put stuff on. The way my autoimmune disorder works is I get scars. So this scar, I don't know if you can see it, is my autoimmune. It looks like I'm burnt. That's my body attacking itself. And so I have, my biggest one is like the size of my hand on my hip. And they told me to put the steroid on it, and I got a chemical it like destroyed my skin on that side. So I have like derma layers that are not there because of it. And so I just was tired of just one doctor would say something, another doctor would say anything. I had 5 doctors. I had 5 specialists that I was going to on an ongoing basis since I was 12 years old, since I was 11 years old. So here I was like 10 years later, and I was just tired of like, okay, it's time to go see my endocrinologist, and then go see the neurosurgeon, and then go see this person, and then go see that person. And then they would have conflicting information, and one person would prescribe something and be like, no, you shouldn't take that, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I would be like, is there ever a moment that I don't have to live like this? And they'd be like, no, this is the rest of your life.
Wow.
And so I was just like, there has to be another way. And because I got diagnosed as a child, I didn't feel empowered to seek an alternative. But in college, I was like, oh, like I'm an adult now, and I can look for different options. And so that's how I got where I'm at now.
Okay. So where are you now with your healing journey? Are you healed? Are you still healing? Are you still on that journey?
I think healing is a lifelong process. It's not like we're not re-traumatized throughout our life. Like trauma does not just stop like in our childhood, So I think I'm constantly healing. Healing is part of my work. But I would say that I give myself more grace and compassion. I feel like I was really hard on myself. Like I had a goal and I needed to meet it when I was in my 20s. And so managing my stress has been more important. And I would say now that I'm a woman who's entering perimenopause, I'm looking at myself in a different kind of way. Because I know that there's things that are happening in my body that I didn't have to think about before that I need to be considerate of.
Okay. And where do you see your work with your artistry and, what you do now in the next, in the future, next 5 years?
We're going to have a healing arts center.
Oh, wow. What does that look like?
A space where you can have an integrative, holistic practice that you can heal, reset, you can immerse yourself in the arts. Because I feel like the arts are something we don't often talk about as a really great healing tool. I think that's what saved my life up until I did all the other holistic integrations. It spared my mental health because I had a space to feel all the things I was feeling. And so I want to create a space where people can do that for themselves.
I love that.
And learn how to do it for themselves.
You mentioned holistic healing approach. What does that mean?
Focusing on mind, body, spirit. Okay. So no part of yourself is eliminated. So that's what I mean by holistic approach. So we're not just going to focus on diet. We're going to also talk about how do you manage your stress and how do you clean up your household so that you don't have things that might be harmful to you within your household. And I really believe that the way that you can help people is not by telling them what to do, but empowering them with the knowledge to make informed decisions.
I love that. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
No, thank you. Thank you for letting me be here.
I'm so happy that you came here.
Yeah.
I really love this conversation. I really enjoyed it. So where can people find you?
They can find me, I guess, maybe I Like It Raw.
On Instagram?
IG and Facebook. Website is yesbabyilikeithraw.com.
Okay.
And on TikTok, I'm Nzingah, Nzingah.
What you doing on TikTok?
I'm doing all the things on TikTok. I do also have a Yes Baby I Like It Raw TikTok that is very much neglected. So my Nzingah is more like all of me, you know, than all the things. And I'm always evolving, so.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Until next time, bye.